ओंटारियो ਦੇ ਐਸੋਸੀਏਟ ਮੈਡੀਕਲ ਅਧਿਕਾਰੀ ਡਾਕਟਰ ਯਾਫੀ ਨੇ ओंटारियो ਅੰਦਰ ਕੋਵਿਡ-19 ਆਊਟਬ੍ਰੇਕਸ ਬਾਰੇ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਦਿੱਤੀ। ਉਹਨਾਂ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਪਿਛਲੇ 2 ਦਿਨਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਪ੍ਰੋਵਿੰਸ ਅੰਦਰ ਸਭ ਤੋਂ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਕੋਵਿਡ-19 ਦੇ ਕੇਸ ਰਿਪੋਰਟ ਕੀਤੇ ਗਏ ਨੇ। ਅੱਜ 985 ਕੇਸ ਪੋਜ਼ਿਟਿਵ ਪਾਏ ਗਏ। ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਸਾਰੇ ਕੇਸਾਂ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ 70% ਕੇਸ ਟੋਰਾਂਟੋ, ਪੀਲ ਅਤੇ ਯਾਰਕ ਦੇ ਹਨ।
Since I last provided an update on Monday, Ontario reported its highest one-day total of new cases on Tuesday, with 1,050 cases. Today, we're reporting 987 new cases. Most of the cases, about 70%, are concentrated in Toronto, Peel, and York. We've also seen a recent increase in the number of deaths related to COVID-19. Yesterday, we reported 14 new deaths, and today, unfortunately, we're reporting an additional 16. With respect to outbreaks, we're also seeing a continued increase. Today, there are 33 new outbreaks, and in the past week, we've seen 107 outbreaks, which is a 10.3% increase over the week before. About half of the outbreaks are occurring in our vulnerable sectors: long-term care homes, retirement homes, group homes, and hospitals. What we are learning is that in many of these settings, there are challenges with preventive measures not being followed during social times, as in breaks, and people going to work when they are ill. This serves as an important reminder for individuals to make sure they really take note of any signs of illness before heading to work, no matter how mild the symptoms. It's also important for workplaces to be very vigilant in screening their employees. I also want to acknowledge that I know how strange it is to practice physical distancing from your coworkers and to wear a mask even when you're on break. But just because you know someone does not reduce the risk of transmitting COVID-19. And this is something that I'm asking we all keep in mind, not just when we are at work. It is also important to keep in mind when we make decisions about our own personal and social interactions. So please keep up the adherence to our public health measures so we can protect each other and reduce the spread of COVID.
ਐਨਡੀਪੀ ਆਗੂ ਜਗਮੀਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਨੇ ਸੰਸਦ ਹਿੱਲ 'ਚ ਪੱਤਰਕਾਰਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕੀਤੀ। ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਦੇ ਵਿਰੋਧੀ ਦਿਵਸ ਮਤੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਦਿੱਤੀ, ਜਿਸ ਦੇ ਬਹਿਸ ਹੋਣ ਵਾਲੀ ਹੈ। ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਐਨਡੀਪੀ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਨੂੰ ਕਹਿਣ ਵਾਲੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ $20 ਮਿਲੀਅਨ ਤੋਂ ਵੱਧ ਜਾਇਦਾਦ ਵਾਲੇ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਟੈਕਸ ਵਸੂਲੀ ਕੀਤੀ ਜਾਣੀ ਚਾਹੀਦੀ ਹੈ। ਉਹਨਾਂ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਐਨਡੀਪੀ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਟੈਕਸ ਉਪਾਵਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਪ੍ਰਾਪਤ ਹੋਈ ਰਕਮ ਆਮਦਨੀ ਸੁਰੱਖਿਆ ਵਿਸਥਾਰ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਲਈ ਲਗਾਈ ਜਾਵੇ।
I know it's on everyone's mind, and I expect questions on that. I just want to talk about our opposition day motion today. A lot of people are starting to become more and more worried about the cost of the pandemic and the debt and deficit. The reason people are worried is because they don't want to feel the burden of that. They don't want to have to pay even more. People have already sacrificed a lot. People have lost their jobs. People have lost their businesses. Some are worried about if they're going to shut down forever. And so those folks who are worried, they're saying, we can't afford to make any more sacrifices if we've already sacrificed so much. So to those people, they're worried because liberal governments and conservative governments have done exactly this. In the past, when times are tough, liberal governments, like Prime Minister Trudeau's in the past, and conservative governments have cut help to people. And a part of the reason why we were so unprepared is because of decisions made by conservative and liberal governments who cut help to healthcare. And by cutting that help, put us in a worse position. So that's why our opposition day motion makes it very clear that to pay for the programs, the help that people need, it should not be you that has to pay for it. It should not be families and people and workers and small businesses who have struggled. It should be those who have profited off the pandemic. It should be the ultra wealthy that contribute their fair share. So we're proposing a tax on the wealthy, of those who have fortunes of over 20 million, and a tax on excess profits, those who have made massive profits. Those large corporations who have made massive profits during this pandemic need to pay their fair share. To fund the healthcare that we need, to fund the housing that is so important as a form of recovery and to help people get a place to live, and to make sure that we are investing in a guaranteed livable income.
ਬ੍ਰੈਂਪਟਨ ਈਸਟ ਤੋਂ ਐਮਪੀਪੀ ਗੁਰਰਤਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਵੱਲੋਂ 1984 ਸਿੱਖ ਕਤਲੇਆਮ ਦਾ ਮੁੱਦਾ ਓਨਟਾਰੀਓ ਵਿਧਾਨ ਸਭਾ ਵਿੱਚ ਚੁੱਕਿਆ ਗਿਆ, ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਆਖਿਆ ਕਿ ਸਿੱਖ ਕਦੇ ਵੀ ਇਸ ਕਤਲੇਆਮ ਨੂੰ ਭੁਲਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਸਕਦੇ। ਸਿੰਘ ਨੇ ਆਖਿਆ ਕਿ ਸਿੱਖ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਹਮੇਸ਼ਾ ਇਨਸਾਫ ਲਈ ਆਵਾਜ਼ ਬੁਲੰਦ ਕਰਦੀ ਰਹੇਗੀ।
Year I struggle writing this speech. How can my words capture the horror of genocide? To share the story of how Sikhs, who stood tall and proud, who looked just like me, had to run and hide from state-sponsored mobs who had but one focus, one goal: murder. In the most vicious of ways, tires were placed around their necks. Kerosene was poured on their head. They were set on fire, burned alive in the street as the police stood by and watched, or worse, participated in the murder. Elected officials, just like you and I, sitting in this assembly today, ordering the death of Sikhs. Betrayal, breaking our most sacred oath to protect those we serve. Combustible powder was used on the flesh of Sikhs. Children were beheaded. Women were raped. It's been 36 years. What more can I say about 1984 other than we will never forget the violence, the genocide that we face at the hands of the Indian government, and more. We will never stop fighting for justice.
ਬ੍ਰੈਂਪਟਨ ਈਸਟ ਤੋਂ ਐਨਡੀਪੀ ਦੇ ਐਮਪੀਪੀ ਗੁਰਰਤਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਨੇ ਫੋਰਡ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਤੋਂ ਮੰਗ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਬ੍ਰੈਂਪਟਨ ਦੀਆਂ ਬਿਹਤਰੀਨ ਤਸਵੀਰਾਂ ਦਿਖਾ ਕੇ ਝੂਠੇ ਵਾਅਦੇ ਕਰਕੇ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਗੁੰਮਰਾਹ ਨਾ ਕਰਨ, ਸਗੋਂ ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੇ ਝੂਠੇ ਸਬਜ਼ ਬਾਗ ਦਿਖਾਉਣ ਦੀ ਥਾਂ ਉਹ ਬ੍ਰੈਂਪਟਨ ਦੇ ਪਰਿਵਾਰਾਂ ਲਈ ਇਸ ਸਮੇਂ ਜ਼ਰੂਰੀ ਹਸਪਤਾਲ ਮੁਹੱਈਆ ਕਰਵਾਉਣ ਅਤੇ ਐਮਰਜੈਂਸੀ ਰੂਮ ਸਰਵਿਸ ਦਾ ਪ੍ਰਸਾਰ ਕਰਨ। ਉਹਨਾਂ ਆਖਿਆ ਕਿ ਪਰਿਵਾਰ ਨੂੰ ਕਈ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੀਆਂ ਦਿੱਕਤਾਂ ਦਾ ਸਾਹਮਣਾ ਕਰਨਾ ਪੈ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ। ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕੇਅਰ ਦੀ ਲੋੜ ਹੈ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਮੋੜ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਹੈ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਕੰਜ਼ਰਵੇਟਿਵ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਹੈਲਥ ਕੇਅਰ ਲਈ ਲੋੜੀਂਦਾ ਪੈਸਾ ਬ੍ਰੈਂਪਟਨ ਵਾਸੀਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਨਹੀਂ ਦੇ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ।
Last week, the Premier came to Brampton and announced that a new hospital is going to be built. Brampton, of course, needs a new hospital. We're a city of over 600,000 people, and we only have one hospital right now. And this is nothing new. Brampton has been underfunded by Liberal and Conservative governments for years. But what Brampton needs is a new 24-hour hospital with an emergency room. So let me be very clear. Will this new hospital have a 24-hour emergency room, or is this Premier making another empty promise? Yes or no?
Minister of Health.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you to the member for the question. I was with the Premier last week when he made the announcement in Brampton, and he is sincere that wanting Brampton to have a new hospital, because that's one of the things that we take a look at is population groups. Brampton has grown dramatically in population. There are other issues that we need to take a look at as well. Condition, shape of the existing hospital, in your case, that's not a concern. But there are many factors that have to be taken into consideration, and there is a process that has to be entered into, as a member will know. And that is something that we will be pleased to receive and to work through. But it isn't something that you just say, as of today, this is what it's going to look like, because that's very much up to the municipality to indicate to the government, to the Ministry of Health, what it is that you want to have in your community.
The supplementary question.
So let me get this straight. The Premier drives all the way out to Brampton to announce that a new hospital is going to be built, but it won't even have a 24-hour emergency room. I think I missed that part of the news conference. So now the over 600,000 people of Brampton are going to have only one hospital to deal with their medical emergencies. Does the Conservative government honestly think that this is going to fix Brampton's healthcare crisis? Families are struggling in Brampton. We are struggling with our one underfunded and overcrowded hospital. But this Conservative government won't commit to funding to fix our healthcare crisis. When will the Premier stop with his empty promises and give Brampton an actual new hospital with a 24-hour emergency room, not just an urgent care centre?
Minister of Health.
Thank you, Speaker. And through you, Speaker, I will remind the member that the purpose of the trip to Brampton was not to announce a new hospital. It was another announcement that the Premier and I were making. However, a question arose with respect to what's happening in Brampton and Brampton's need for a new hospital. Certainly there is a knowledge that this is a fast-growing area. The population has grown tremendously in Brampton and surrounding area, and so it is incumbent on the local municipality, the local hospital association, to come up with a plan for what type of hospital you want to have, with an emergency department, without an emergency department. That's not something that the Ministry of Health just decides upon. That is working in consultation with the municipality to understand what the specific needs are. And if that's what Brampton wants to do, we invite them to come to the Ministry of Health and speak to us about it.
ਓਨਟਾਰੀਓ ਦੇ ਪ੍ਰੀਮੀਅਰ ਡਗ ਫੋਰਡ ਨੇ ਮਾਈਨਰ ਹਿੱਲ 'ਚ ਪੱਤਰਕਾਰਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਸੰਬੋਧਨ ਕੀਤਾ। ਇਸ ਦੌਰਾਨ ਪ੍ਰੀਮੀਅਰ ਡਗ ਫੋਰਡ ਨੇ ਸੂਬੇ ਭਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੇਠਲੇ ਪੱਧਰ ਤੇ ਭਾਈਚਾਰਿਆਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਬ੍ਰਾਡਬੈਂਡ ਅਤੇ ਸੈਲੂਲਰ ਪੱਧਰ ਤੇ ਵਿਸਥਾਰ ਲਈ $680 ਬਿਲੀਅਨ ਦਾ ਵਾਧੂ ਐਲਾਨ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੈ। ਇਹ ਨਵੀਂ ਫੰਡਿੰਗ 3 ਸਾਲਾ ਕੋਵਿਡ-19 ਬਜਟ ਵਿੱਚ ਸ਼ਾਮਲ ਹੋਵੇਗੀ ਜੋ ਓਨਟਾਰੀਓ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਜਾਰੀ ਕੀਤੀ ਜਾਵੇਗੀ।
Even with all our modern advances, there are still 12% of Ontarians who still don't have access to high-speed internet. That's over 1.4 million people. Before the crisis, I made it my personal mission as Premier to improve broadband and connect these communities, and to make sure no part of Ontario was left behind in the 21st century. That's why today I'm very proud to announce our government is making a historic investment of nearly $1 billion to build better broadband across the province. We're investing over $680 million in the upcoming 2020 Ontario budget. And this funding is in addition to our initial commitment to invest $315 million over 5 years in shovel-ready broadband projects. It will help communities like Minden and Kawartha Lakes get access to the internet and cell service we all rely on. For communities like Minden, better broadband can make a world of difference. It means more economic development, more chances to grow a business, more opportunities for young people. And we will continue to grow and expand these investments with our telecom and municipal partners and make every dollar count. With partners like the Eastern Ontario Regional Network, or EORN for short, that have incredible track records. EORN has laid down 5,500 kilometers of fiber optic cable. They're bringing wireless access to almost 90% of homes and businesses in Eastern Ontario. Those are the kind of results we invest in. Those are the kind of shovel-ready projects we want. Projects that will create jobs, improve quality of life, and bring massive benefits to these communities. So thank you, Mayors Letham and Devlin. Your leadership and support is unbelievable for EORN. My friends, this is just the beginning. Tomorrow, when we release our 2020 budget, we will deliver a plan to protect, support, and recover our province. A plan to get our economy firing on all cylinders once again, while keeping people safe and healthy. Today, we take another step down that road, a road to a stronger, more prosperous, and more connected province for everyone.
ਓਨਟਾਰੀਓ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਤ ਮੰਤਰੀ ਰੋਡ ਫਿਲਿਪਸ ਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਓਨਟਾਰੀਓ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਲਗਾਤਾਰ ਐਕਸ਼ਨ ਪਲਾਨ ਬਾਰੇ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕੀਤੀ ਜਾ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ। ਉਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਕੋਵਿਡ-19 ਰਿਸਪਾਂਸ ਲਈ 3 ਸਾਲਾਂ ਬਜਟ ਪੇਸ਼ ਕੀਤਾ ਜਾਵੇਗਾ। ਉਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਕਿਹਾ ਕੋਰੋਨਾ ਮਹਾਮਾਰੀ ਦੌਰਾਨ ਪ੍ਰਭਾਵਿਤ ਹੋਏ ਲੋਕ, ਬਿਜ਼ਨਸਾਂ ਅਤੇ ਕਾਮਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਆਰਥਿਕ ਮਦਦ ਪਹੁੰਚਾਈ ਜਾ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ ਅਤੇ ਇਸ ਨੂੰ ਅੱਗੇ ਪਹੁੰਚਾਉਣ ਦੀ ਵੀ ਤਿਆਰੀ ਕੀਤੀ ਜਾ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ।
Tomorrow, I'll announce the next phase of Ontario's action plan. It will be a 3-year budget that will build on our government's response to COVID-19. Most importantly, we will make available every necessary resource to continue to protect people's health, and it will expand on the support our government has provided to those still facing financial hardship due to the pandemic, including families, workers, vulnerable people, seniors, and employers. The plan will have 3 pillars. And as we announced Monday, the first pillar is protect, making good on Premier Ford's commitment to do whatever it takes to get the people of Ontario through the pandemic. The second pillar is support, because we know COVID-19 has brought severe challenges and economic difficulties to families and employers. And the third pillar is recover, because as COVID-19 continues to cause uncertainty in the global economy, we need to position Ontario for a strong recovery, even while being focused on the urgent needs of today. One of the greatest frustrations during COVID-19 has been the lack of reliable, high-speed internet and cell service for too many households in Ontario, due to the lack of adequate broadband infrastructure. This isn't some abstract first world problem. These days, a lack of reliable internet can make it almost impossible to earn a living, get an education, see your doctor, or stay in touch with loved ones. Which is why this important step towards achieving our vision of having every home, business, and farm in Ontario connected by broadband is such a significant part of our Recover pillar. Our historic investment of almost $1 billion to improve broadband and cellular access will provide so many more people with better ways to connect, to work, to learn, and to stay in touch during these unprecedented times and beyond. As we all deal with the day-to-day impacts of COVID-19, it may seem ambitious to start talking about recovery. But someday, hopefully soon, COVID-19 will fade. And then every government in the world will be focused on recovering from the economic crisis caused by this pandemic. For Ontario to recover, we need strong, sustained economic growth. We cannot expect our economy just to bounce back or for the lost jobs to return on their own. We need to start the work of recovery now. There are long-standing structural barriers that we all know that without action will stand in the way, and that includes the lack of reliable internet in many communities. So tomorrow's budget will begin to remove the biggest barriers to growth for communities across the province. One thing that we've all learned from this global pandemic is the value of humility. Being confident enough to admit what we don't know, but bold enough to learn from our collective experience. So while Ontario's 2020 budget will look confidently to the future, it will not presume that any of us have all the answers. Ontario's 2020 budget was prepared recognizing this historic era of uncertainty we're experiencing, and it will capitalize on one of our great strengths, our stability.
ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ। ਪਲੀਜ਼ ਸਾਡੇ ਚੈਨਲ ਸਾਂਝਾ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਨੂੰ ਲਾਈਕ ਤੇ ਸਬਸਕ੍ਰਾਈਬ ਕਰੋ YouTube ਤੇ।